Right, hello everyone. Well, just before we start the main video, I just wanted to drop this little tip in that works for me and might work for you as well. So, as you can see, I use a racing play seat which usually holds the steering wheel to put the joystick on. And one of the things you'll notice is that when I'm flying, because of my shaky hands due to this dystonia, I rest my elbow on the right hand side of my body, and by doing so, by pulling the joystick back, I actually add in two elements rather than one. So pulling the joystick back actually, because your elbow is on your chest, pulls to the right as well as pulling backwards. So hovering was getting a bit awkward for me. So as you see here, if I grab hold of it, elbows on my side, pull back in a straight line, it's not a natural movement. The natural movement is to actually pull back in a straight line, and you add right hand as well as backwards on at the same time. Now, one of the things that I'd been thinking about was that when I fly, but in particular, if I rotated the joystick to the angle of my arm so that backwards was backwards and left and right was left and right, would I see an improvement? And actually I did. I saw a major improvement in certainly lining up on small helipads. So if you are somebody who flies with your arm on your hip or something like that, and you're not gripping the joystick just with your fingertips, maybe rotating it round to the angle might help you improve your hovering, and certainly it helped me improve mine. Now if you had a joystick that went to the floor, the sort of movement I'm showing now, that actually might work better. Maybe a longer stick to a floor would work better than the short throw that we have on our normal joysticks. But just as a tip, it's just something I found that helped me just recently. Give the joystick a rotate so it's actually in line with your arm. If you pull backwards, backwards is backwards, sideways is sideways, and it certainly did help me, and it makes a difference. And so I'm going to jump back into the main part of this video, which is really just called Mastering My Descent in a Small Helicopter, and hope you enjoy it. I'd found recently, especially flying the Cadbury, that I was coming in at all sort of odd angles, and I seem to have lost the reference points inside the cabin for a straight landing, keeping the tail in line, and also judging the height of actually where I'm going to land. So this little first one here was the culmination of a couple of hours of sitting down and practicing descents. And one of the things I do, obviously I fly a lot in VR, but when I go to the flat screen mode, I find it extremely difficult to judge distance and height. So I spent a bit of time inside the cabin and looking for the proper reference points. And one of the things here is that I'd been flying with that lovely piece of string as my center point of where I was going to fly to, but obviously we sit to the side of that, and so if ever you're making an approach, that bit of string should be on the left hand side, and in fact where the AviTab control panel is nearer to the center of where you should be aiming the helicopter to land. And then of course it's a matter of keeping the tail in a straight line as we come down. And still the last couple of feet I still haven't mastered it completely, but it's a big improvement, and it was very satisfying to actually finally manage to get it done and go this way. So a couple of landings here which I suppose show off the fact that the landings are improving and the distance is improving. I've never ever managed to land on there before. It's always gone off sideways. And then really just a matter of letting loose here in this great scenery. And with the Cadbury, again, it's a great little helicopter for flying around in close confined spaces. But even in close confined spaces here, the trick is to keep the string on the left hand side of any path or, let's say, roadway that you're going down, and if not, the Avitab sign should be just on the left there. So if you want to clear the trees and go down the middle of this path, I have trouble looking directly forward. Obviously over the joystick is the correct position, but I'm finding now that if I get in this helicopter and I'm going somewhere, if I keep the string to the left hand edge of any path or roadway that I'm flying down, I'm pretty much centered and going in a straight line. So a little bit hovering around here, and we'll pull out onto the main dirt track and then put the nose down and head off. But you'll see that again, using the bit of string, left hand edge marker there for the turn, gone off a bit but it will come back. And it's made a major difference to hovering around on a flat screen. Don't get this in VR, it just works in VR, I can do it straight away, but on the flat screen, keeping that piece of string left hand side of this path coming down here keeps us to the centre, and there'll be a bit of varying backwards and forwards, but it's just a tip I picked up and wanted to pass on, and then just show some nice video of the Cadbury flying around in a good location. Really do manage to pick some speed up here, and then we'll pull up for a semi-stall turn, I suppose. One of the things on these smaller helicopters is the amount of tail rotor power is limited, so it doesn't always work, and sometimes you have to drop off the collective to get the tail to spin round correctly. But then we dive back down into the dirt road and head back the way we came. But the more I've flown this Cadbury helicopter, it really is a joy in confined areas, small places. It really is a great deal of fun. I did a video recently of a longer journey to Victoria, and I did it in the Cadbury, and that should have been in the Bell 412 or the Jet Ranger or something. It's a long way to go for a small helicopter, so pick the helicopter for the right location and you'll have a great deal more fun doing it. So you can see here, tail's at a slight angle. I should be straightening that up, trying to keep everything in a straight line. Certainly from inside the cabin, I'm using the string to the left hand side of this pathway, and it seems to keep on a flat screen for me the right position. And what I've done, I've gone into each of my favourite helicopters and looked at the reference points of when I'm looking at this screen, because I seem to have this inability to just stare forward and for it to fly in a straight line. I always want to aim with that piece of string to the centre. It takes a fair bit of I'm going to say practice to keep that string on the side and make it fly in a straight line. So we're coming in here, nice soft approach, better landings than I've managed for a long while. So a couple of hours well spent at Shoreham, taking off, different approaches. I put on some wind and various other things to make sure I could do it in a number of scenarios, but I think I just actually got very lazy when I was flying around and not concentrating enough. So a little bit of hover practice here. and it just shows how good a little helicopter this is in confined spaces. Now, as I say, this was just a little combination of some videos that I'd actually been doing. So the last one was a bit of fun, and so my favourite other helicopter at the moment is the Bell 412. So here we are at Shoreham. We've dropped off at Tesco's on the roundabout in the centre, probably to pick some beer up or something to take to Brighton, and that's going to be the story of this one. And so just what great scenery the Orbix scenery is here, and what a great helicopter the 412 looks like. It's a joy to fly, it really is. So there we go, over Tesco's. We've picked up the beer and we're going to head off down to Brighton and land somewhere down there, and no doubt have a party on a nice summer's day. But as usual with any of my flights, I get a bit bored halfway, and some maniac in the cockpit here is going to press both the fire extinguishers in a minute to put it in, well, to switch the engines off, which is one way I found of doing it. I can't find the fuel valve setting on this one, so we're plodding along. Some mad idiot has now hit the fire extinguisher buttons to put the engines out of action, and so we're going to see if we can do an auto rotation back to Tesco's where we started. So this is a great helicopter for doing autos in. If you can keep the speed up and the descent right, you have plenty left at the bottom. The problem I had here was working out from the cockpit, one, where Tesco's roundabout was, and also I wasn't actually far enough away, so I've got to do a sort of S pattern to kill some speed off and then actually position myself back for the landing. So we'll be doing a right hand bank turn in a minute and heading back towards Tesco's roundabout. Now I've actually managed to judge it reasonably well on the bank here, and then we do another bank to the left. Every time you bank, the rotor RPM goes up a bit, but all of a sudden I seem to be a bit low. It's going to be a long stretch back to Tesco's here, and it's just a bit of fun. As I say, it's switching the engine off when you're not expecting it is always a good bit of fun and good practice. And so by the look of it, we're just short. So we nearly made it back to Tesco's, but just for fun and a shorter video than the extravaganzas that I've been doing of recent, and just showing off some of my favourite helicopters in good locations. Here's some outside shots to the 412 just flying around. I love this colour scheme, and the cockpit detail is just fantastic. Now, one of the things you could see there is that my collective that I've been working on has suddenly developed an oscillation, a bit like the my hands with my dystonia, and the Hall effect sensor is playing up a little bit, so it never stops up and down rocking, which of course affects my flying to no end. I'm sure that's why my landings are as terrible as they are, but I need to take it apart, and I think maybe I had the Hall effect sensor and the magnet just too far back, right on its limit. But anyway, back to the scenery. What a great helicopter this is. Highly recommend it to anyone. It's the AB 412 X Trident, and arriving back at Tesco's, and after all my practice, just short, so we'll have to head forward, try again, get it in the middle. but just some fun. So thank you everyone for taking the time to watch the video. I do appreciate it. Anyone who likes this type of thing, if you would like to subscribe, I've got a bet going on with my son that we're going to reach 50 soon, which he said would never happen. So I always appreciate anyone that takes the time to watch. And here you can see me frantically trying to centre the helicopter in the centre of the roundabout, but to be honest, let's just give up and call it a day. Thank you everyone, and everyone have a great week.